I only meant to return her umbrella, not my common sense. It was the kind with the wooden crook and a rip stitched with red thread so it looked like a smiling scar. I'd taken it by accident from Tasha's hallway after one of our movie nights. There'd been popcorn and a documentary she swore would change my life and a cat that kept head-butting my ankle like it had a plan. When I realized, I turned around in the rain and walked back up the block, the city tasting like wet metal and rosemary from someone's window box. Mara opened the door. "Wrong door?" she asked, amused. There was rain in her hair and a streak of newsprint on her thumb. She had that unhurried way people sometimes have when they know what the next hour will be, and the hour after that. I didn't. "Wrong umbrella," I said, holding it up like evidence. "I'm sorry. I grabbed yours. The old one in our shop snapped in the wind like a bird bone." "You're Ray," she said. "The bookseller with ink on her knuckles." I glanced at my hands. A smear of black from the morning's receipt roll betrayed me. Guilty. "Come in before it gets theatrical," she said. "It's about to pour sideways." I stepped inside. Tasha wasn't home. Mara told me she'd gone to trivia at a bar with a chandelier that looked like it had wandered in from another life. I knew the place. The house smelled like lemon peel in the end of a long day. There were books in stacks, not precious stacks, just lived-in ones, dog-eared paperbacks, a hardcover with a busted spine. On the table, a spread-open newspaper ran a headline about city budgets that I'd pretend to understand if asked. Mara set the umbrella by the door and poured hot water over a tea bag already in a mug, chipped at the rim, repaired with a thin line of glue that shone in the light. Her hands were precise in that way that made me watch them. She'd had Tasha at 19. I knew that from a winter conversation on the walk home, our breath making a twin fog. Tasha saying it too casually. "Mom did everything early. Driving, cooking, having me." I was 26. Mara was 46. The numbers sat politely in the room like good guests. Neither of us invited them to speak. "You can tell me the truth," she said, easing into a chair. "Did Tasha bully you into the documentary?" She used the words life-changing and urgent, and then bribed me with licorice. "Did it work?" "The licorice, yes," I said. "The documentary, ask me when I've had tea." She laughed, late and low. "Tea first, then opinions." We had tea and talked about city council like it was weather, about the bookstore where I worked, Rook and Fur on the corner of Pine and 11th with the slouched awning and the way our neighborhood smelled like coffee, even on the days it didn't deserve it. Rain jittered on the window. Our conversation had the weight of nothing dangerous, which is why I didn't notice the moment it slipped into something else. Just a comment about a sentence. Just a glance that held. When the rain slowed, I stood. "I'll get out of your hair." "Bring Tasha home next time," she said. "Or don't. It's nice, meeting the people my daughter loves." "She'd be embarrassed you said that out loud." "She'll survive," Mara said and smiled, the silver at her temples catching the kitchen light like threads the storm left behind. I left with my own battered umbrella and a ridiculous awareness of how her voice had stayed in my chest, like stepping into a quiet room and hearing a note still vibrating in the air. I saw Mara everywhere after that, or thought I did. A woman bending to tie her boot outside the deli, a flicker of gray hair at the farmer's market, a laugh from a table where I couldn't see the faces. The city is built for hauntings like that. Mirrors, bus windows, the gleam of a storefront. Someone appears at your side and then isn't. Twice, she actually appeared. The first time, she ducked into Rook and Fur on a Tuesday while the rain harangued the front glass. She looked like weather had happened to her. which made me like her more. She shook her umbrella and leaned it against the children's shelf, which had a little sign I'd lettered that said, "Beware of dragons in ink," I still had under my nails. "Off the record," she said, grinning. "I won't say a word about the dragons." "You're allowed to quote them, but only if they consent," I said. "Do dragons consent?" "Only if you ask politely." She looked happy in the store, the way people look in the places our childhood selves would have approved of. Mara worked as an editor at the Beacon, the city paper, nights and deadlines, and people's tragedies stacked out like plates. The bookstore felt like the opposite of that. She ran her fingers along the spines as if reading through her skin and paused at a used novel with penciled notes marching the margins. "Do you think he meant this?" she asked me, pointing to a sentence. The handwriting said, "Gently cruel." I looked. "Gently because he couldn't bear to be honest," I said. "Cruel because he did it anyway." She nodded. "You're good at this." Occupational hazard. Mara bought the book and a gift for Tasha, a hardback field guide to urban birds, because Tasha had recently decided crows were trying to tell her something. "They are," Mara said dryly. "They're saying, 'We're smarter than you. Stop underestimating us.'" The second time was 2 weeks later, late in the day, the sky the pale of an old bruise. The store had emptied, and I was dragging a box to the back when my wrist did something unwise. The box thunked the floor, and I hissed through my teeth. "Don't panic," a voice said from the door. "I come bearing soup." It was Mara with a paper bag. "I was passing by," she added, as if that made it less of a gesture. The soup smelled like garlic and patience. She saw my wrist, the way I was cradling it. "Let me," she said. "I'm fine," I lied. She set the bag down and took my wrist anyway, gently, her fingers steady. "May I?" That word again. Permission like a small, sturdy bridge between us. "Yes," I said. And my voice did a thing it only does when it has to cross the bridge and not fall. She wrapped an elastic bandage from a first aid kit I kept under the counter for paper cuts and hubris. Her breath was warm when she leaned close. At some point, the radio station switched to something slow, a cello the size of a room. We both heard it, I think. We both pretended not to. "You should rest this," she said. "I will." "You won't." "I'll try," she smiled. "Better." When she left, she touched the little lighthouse key on my key ring, the pack rat prize of a childhood summer I barely remembered, like it was a talisman. "See you," she said soft, like an agreement instead of a throwaway line. Tasha's birthday party was one of those loud, tender catastrophes that end in someone falling asleep half under a coffee table. I helped carry the cake. I didn't drink because the last time I did, at 21, there had been karaoke in a trapeze-themed bar, and I hadn't trusted myself since. The living room flashed with phone cameras. I found Mara in the kitchen, rinsing berries, her sleeves rolled to her elbows, a small galaxy of water on them. "You've been conscripted," she said. "We're out of plates." "Paper or actual?" "Actual," she said with conviction. "I can't bring myself to give the planet more paper." We bumped shoulders. It was my fault? Or hers? I don't know. There are things you only do because it feels like you're not doing them. Her hair smelled like rain still, or maybe my body had decided everything about her did. She slid the knife through the cake with the kind of care that made you imagine what other things she could cut or not cut. I handed her plates. There's a beach in Ballard that still has wild roses, she said, out of nowhere. When? When they bloom, she said, amused at her own vagueness. We used to go when Tasha was little. She'd scream at the cold water, then run straight into it. I pictured a small girl with Tasha's chaos energy and a woman with Mara's watchful patience, and felt something both tender and wrong tug at me. Tender because I wanted in on any story that made that woman smile. Wrong because I knew the story wasn't mine to enter. Later that night, after Tasha had made 3 messy toasts and 1 spectacular joke at my expense, Mara and I took the trash out together like conspirators. The city had gone glossy with after rain. We didn't say anything important. We said, "Careful, Glass, and watch your step, and thank you." I could feel the space between the words. When I said goodbye, she touched my forearm, a quick pulse of contact, and said, "We should be careful." "I know," I said, and we both let go. I tell myself that what happened didn't start with the storm, but storms are good at pretending they start things, so I'll let it. The storm took the lights at 7. She took the chair across from me at 8. Thunder rolled in like furniture moved upstairs. The bookstore lost power with a little sigh, leaving the windows dark mirrors. A dozen neighbors popped in to ask if we were open by candlelight, and I said yes until the wax ran low. I called Tasha to see if she needed a lift from the bus stop, but her phone went straight to voicemail. Then the bell clinked, and Mara pushed the door open against the wind. "I wanted to make sure you weren't sitting here alone in the dark," she said, breathless. Though, full disclosure, I've always wanted to sit in a bookstore in the dark. "You're making your own dreams come true," I said, and we both smiled at the absurd domesticity of it. The lantern on the counter lit our faces in the gentle, honest way shadows sometimes do. She was damp and bright, like she'd been arguing with the weather and would do it again. She took off her coat and hung it on the corner of a display. Under it, a gray sweater soft enough to be worth envying. I made tea from water boiled on a camping stove we kept for emergencies, and she sat in that chair, and we listened to the rain flatten all the edges of the city. "It's funny," she said finally, her voice careful, "how much being a parent means learning to be a boundary with legs. And how much being someone's friend means learning not to climb over," I said. "We could survive not saying the thing we're both not saying," I finished. "And we could be proud of that," she said, "and still regret it." Her hands were on the table, palms down, as if to steady it. Mine were wrapped around the mug, heat licking my fingers. I thought of the lighthouse on my key ring, how a thing that keeps you from the rocks also keeps you from the shore if you ignore it. "I don't know what to do," I said. The words surprised me by being exactly true. Mara's eyes, steady, gray, tired from a week of editing other people's lives, met mine. "We hold very still," she said. "We listen. If stillness feels like honesty, we stay. If it feels like fear, we move." She said it like a person used to talking people through disasters or Tuesday nights. I set the mug down with care. "And if we move? Then we move on purpose." I reached across the table. She did not meet me halfway. She waited to be chosen, perhaps because she'd spent so much of her life doing the choosing. When our hands met, she exhaled like a door opening somewhere. "May I?" I asked, and the may I felt like both a formality and a promise. "Yes," she said. "If we're going to be foolish, let's be gentle, at least." We kissed with the storm heckling the windows, The lantern tugging at our shadows, the bookstore smelling like paper and rain, the thunder doing its best to narrate. There was nothing dramatic about the way our mouths fit. It felt like something that had been waiting for years in another life. We were careful, we asked. We stopped to laugh when my elbow found the bell again and it complained. We were both adults and neither of us pretended otherwise. At some point, we found the back room where the coats hung and the step stool lived, and the boxes did their best to look away. I'm not going to tell you more than this. When her sweater lifted under my hands, the curve of her shoulder shocked me with its ordinary beauty. When she said my name, it was not a question and not a command. When we lay afterward on the rug meant for rolling carts, the storm finally moved on, because even the weather knew when to leave. We were quiet. She brushed a bit of shop dust from my cheek with the back of her hand. This was real, she said, as if I might doubt it, as if she might. It happened. And now we have to figure out how to let it matter without breaking anything, I said. And we lay there, both of us looking up at the noisy ceiling like it might teach us. The morning made everything more visible than we wanted. The lights came back to size from the espresso place across the street. I made us coffee, handed her the chipped staff mug we all used, and no one claimed because we loved it more than our pride. She held it like a benediction. We're not telling Tasha until we know what this is, I started. We're telling Tasha before we do this again, Mara said at the exact same time, and our words clinked like glasses with two different drinks in them. We looked at each other over coffee that was too strong and not strong enough. She's my best friend, I said. I know what it would do to her if we lied. She's my daughter, Mara said. I know what it would do to her if she found out from anyone but me. We were on the same side. We still landed in different chairs. I stared at the little lighthouse on my keys and imagined what it would be like to be brave enough for both of us. Tonight, I said, before I could take it back. Tell her tonight. Mara nodded. She wiped the edge of the mug with her thumb as if she could erase the chip. Tonight, she echoed. Then she kissed me once, quickly, the kind of kiss that understands daylight, and left. I stayed behind, an alphabetized poetry with a fervor bordering on unhinged. Every time the bell rang, I thought it would be Tasha, and my stomach turned into a very tidy knot. It was not Tasha. It was a man returning a novel because he'd accidentally bought it twice. It was a mother looking for a book with a dog in it, but not a dying one. It was a woman who had written a book herself and wanted us to put it in the window, and I wished I controlled more windows than I did. At 6:43, Tasha walked in like she was late to a story. Her hair was pulled into a shape that defied clear labels, and she had a purple umbrella she wielded like a flag. Power's back, she announced. Are you still open? Did you light candles and sing sea shanties? Did pirates come? Only polite ones, I said. My throat kicked. Mom around? She said, scanning the store. She texted me to meet her here. No, she'll be home, I stammered. The knot doubled down. I was not the person I liked to be in those next minutes. I was not brave for anyone. Oh, Tasha said, frowning, and then blinked at something behind the counter. Mara's scarf was draped over the stool, soft gray, threaded with a line of red that echoed the umbrella's stitched scar. It looked like the kind of coincidence that only exists when a person is unable to leave no trace. Is that? Tasha said and stopped. Her eyes moved from the scarf to me. Tasha is the kind of friend who can tell when you've actually had a good day from the way you say fine. She's also the kind of daughter who is very rarely wrong about her mother. Ray? I felt, with a clarity that emptied me, the exact shape of the truth. We were going to tell you, I said. Useless, weak, the kind of truth that sounds like a lie even when it isn't. Tonight. Her face did a dozen things at once and then decided on only one. A blankness that looked more than anything like a held breath. My mother, she said. Yes, I said. How long? It started last night, I answered, and because I am not a coward all the way down, I met her eyes when I said it. She closed her own. Ray, she said, and in my name there was so much history I could have stretched it across the street like a bridge. Jokes, alarms, mornings in pajamas, the day we learned the coffee shop had been sold, the afternoon we argued about whether ghosts would care about landlord disputes. You're my person, she said. Didn't I say that? You are my person. I am, I said, helpless, because it was true, and also something else was true. And she's my mother. I know. And I can't explain to you in words, a language we both speak, how those two truths can't sleep in the same house. She laughed once, a single hard note. We need to set things on fire to make room, and I can't. I won't. Mara's shape filled the doorway. She took in the scene, her scarf, our faces, the way Tasha was holding herself as if one wrong shoulder movement would unspool the entire city. Mom, Tasha said, not a greeting. Mara didn't ask if we had already said it. She could smell it in the room. She looked at me, and the look said, "Thank you for not lying," and I looked at her, and the look said I tried to, but failed. The three of us stood there like a short play might screenshot us. We should talk at home, Mara said. No, Tasha said, quick. Here's good. Everything is always happening here anyway. You're hurting, Mara said. Yes, Tasha agreed, and I'm so angry I could respectfully burn down a municipal building. Respectfully, Mara repeated, a habit of hers when she was trying not to condescend. There was nothing performative about what happened next. It was ordinary and devastating. We used our indoor voices. No one cried theatrically. Tasha asked questions like a journalist, and I answered like a guilty person who had nonetheless done the right thing too late. Mara was better than both of us, clear and soft and absolutely unwilling to play the heroine. Tasha said she felt betrayed twice, once by me, once by the idea that people did this sort of thing only in stories other people had to clean up after. The room decided to breathe again and then stopped. I said I would disappear for a while. Tasha said, from me or from my mother? And I said, both. And if there had been a barometer, it would have fallen. Mara walked Tasha home. I turned the sign to closed and sat on the stool with the scarf and pressed it to my mouth like a patient with a compress. The keys in my palm made little moon marks. I wished for a lighthouse, sturdy enough to tell me that this particular shoreline was off limits, but all I had was the small metal charm which didn't even light up. We tried to do what good people do after they've done something true at the wrong time. We waited. We didn't see each other. I answered Tasha's text about appointments and cat sitting like nothing had metastasized in the language between us. I slept badly. Mara sent one email that said simply, I am here, and then nothing else. The city moved ahead with its agendas, grants, repairs, an early cherry blossom show that pissed off people who love the calendar, and we went on pretending. I lied once, properly. I told myself time would fix it. That lie was so gentle, it almost didn't hurt. It just numbed the place that could have healed. 4 weeks later, a Saturday. Bright enough the crosswalks looked new. I saw Maribou at the farmer's market. She was weighing potatoes like decisions. I wasn't going to go near her. Then she looked up, saw me, and that was that. Hi, she said. There was a line, 3 people deep, behind her. The world does not pause for the delicate. "Hi," I said. "How are you?" "Hungry," I said, because it was the first answer I trusted. "And you?" She smiled with half her mouth. "Same." "Is Tasha—" "She's okay," Mara said. "She's angry in a very organized way." A beat. She got that from me. The organized part, I mean. "Please tell her I started. "I do," Mara said, "when it helps." We stood there with a vendor between us calling out radishes like a miracle, and the world decided to show us how ridiculous we were. I almost laughed. Mara reached into her bag and took out a book, and for a second I thought she had started carrying novels around in case she ran into me, which felt like something I would do. "I've had this on my desk for weeks," she said. "It belongs with you." It was the used book with the penciled notes. On the title page, under the author's name, a new hand had written in small script, "There are loves you keep as weather, not shelter. M." My eyes did that thing eyes do when they're not going to let you see what they're seeing for a minute. I nodded. "Thank you," I said, even though gratitude wasn't the right word. It was maybe the only word that behaved itself. She glanced at my keyring. "You still have your lighthouse?" she said. "I do," I said. "It's not very bright." "It doesn't have to be," she said. "It just has to be sure." She touched my wrist. It was one of those touches you can pretend didn't happen if someone asks you later. Then the potatoes were her turn, and she picked red ones. The real ending is smaller than the storm, quieter than the market. I was closing one night, dusting in that perfunctory way that mostly moves dust around, when I heard the bell and didn't look up, because it was probably a man needing directions to the Thai place that had moved 3 blocks south 3 years ago. "Hi," Mara said, and I looked up so fast my neck didn't forgive me for 2 days. "Hi," I said. She had the chipped mug in her hands, the one she'd used here the morning after the storm, the one with the repaired crack that gleamed in lamplight. "I borrowed this," she said, and I couldn't remember her borrowing it, but I understood immediately that she had, and that she was the kind of person for whom borrowing might take a while to resolve. The crack had been sealed more carefully this time, finer, a thread of gold repair that caught and threw the light back without apology. "Kintsugi," I said, touching the seam with 2 fingers. "I didn't know you do that." "I don't," she said. "I learned because I broke something I loved once and didn't know how to live with it being broken. Turns out you can learn almost anything if you stand still long enough with a ruin." "This wasn't broken," I said quietly. "Wasn't it?" She tilted the mug toward the lantern on the counter, letting the light run along the seam. "I brought it back because it's yours, and because I needed you to know I know the difference between the things that are mine and the things that never were." I didn't ask her into the back room or anywhere else. We stood at the counter, the bell perfectly silent, the city a hum beyond the glass. She set the mug down. "Ray," she said, and if names have shapes, hers made a shelter over mine. "Are we?" I managed, then stopped. There's a tone people use when they've been brave too long. I could hear it in my own voice. "We are not," she said, with kindness so intact I had to look away from it. "Not because I don't want to, and not because you did anything wrong. Because I am her mother, and you are her friend. And if I'm going to be the person I promised her I would be when she was new to the world, then this is where I put my hands at my sides and say, 'Enough.'" I swallowed. "Okay." I'm sorry for the part where I made this harder by being a person you could love, she added, and the corner of my mouth betrayed me by wanting to smile at the way only she could apologize like that. We'll be okay, I said. I didn't believe it, but I knew it needed saying to exist at all. Eventually, we'll be weather. Not shelter, she said. Not shelter, I repeated, and something in both of us exhaled. We didn't hug. I think if we had, I would have had to go to ground for months. She lifted the mug in a brief toast and then left the way people leave who have a small, fierce person waiting for them at home with questions and a cat. The bell made its even-tempered sound. The door closed. I stood with my hands on the counter, pressing my palms to the place the mug had warmed. A spring turned into June. Tasha and I learned a new shape around each other, sharper than before but real. We argued about a city ballot and agreed on a cake recipe. We didn't mention the thing you aren't supposed to mention if you want to keep it from knocking everything else off the shelves. Sometimes we failed, and then we fixed it. I kept seeing gray sweaters in crowds and ending up behind strangers. One evening, I walked to the beach with the wild roses, the wind doing what it wanted, and let the cold water wash my ankles until I couldn't feel my feet. The sky was a patient gray. I took my keys out and stared at the tiny lighthouse, and then, because it seemed reasonable in that specific weather, I talked to it. You did your job, I said. You kept me from the worst rocks, but it still hurts to watch the ship go by. A couple nearby pretended not to hear me. A dog refused to pretend and wagged its entire body in my direction. I breathed. The roses pushed their scent into the air like a dare. I went home and made tea in the mended mug and read the book with the penciled notes and the single new line in Mara's hand. There are loves you keep as weather, not shelter. I understood it better at the end of that day than I had at the market. Weather is not the enemy. Weather makes everything grow or decides it won't. Weather paints the mood of a city and bleaches old wounds. You can't live in it without a roof forever, but you can step into it and be remade. Every now and then I pass the Beacon building at dusk and look up at the lit floor where an editor I won't name does triage on a city that never stops talking. I don't go in. I don't wait outside. I walk by with a steady pace and a lighthouse on my keys and a scar-stitched umbrella that still keeps most of the rain off. As for what we were a good mistake, a kind one, the sort people survive and take out on lonely nights like old photographs to be sure they didn't imagine it. We didn't. It happened. It mattered. And then we let it be weather.
Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell. For exclusive content and early access, check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.